Can everybody get a seat? We're going to get started. It's 1 o'clock.
Some changes here. Proposed when we get to the resolutions about Tyler and Sean. James doing Sean.
I think we need a few more board members. Sit down and we'll get going. I think we're in pretty good shape. We got everybody up. All right. I think we'll get started. I want to welcome everybody to the IBHE board meeting. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to also thank ISU for representing or for having us here. My name is Tom Cross, and I serve as the board chair, and I enjoy very much the role of the board chair. And I think this is a very, very good board in a struggling, challenging time for the state of Illinois. But we're lucky to have the folks that are serving on this board in the capacity they are and doing a good job, as well as our incredible staff. So why don't we, in the need to be organized, go ahead and call roll. And Cindy, will you do that?
Bombanek,
Present.
Bergman,
Present.
Coffee,
Present.
Foots Anderson,
Present.
Garate,
Present.
Hayes,
Present.
Huber,
Present.
Jacobs,
Present.
Langer,
Present.
Palos,
Present.
Rivera,
Present.
Solario,
Present.
Thomas,
Present.
Weissman,
Present.
Cross.
I'm here. All right, so we have one board member, Paul Langer, is unable to attend and the board meeting due to business reasons. So I need a motion from the board allowing him to attend our board meeting via conference call.
Mr. Chair, I move to allow Board Member Paul Langer to attend our board meeting by a conference call pursuant to Section 7 of the Open Meetings Act.
Well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Easy to read a script.
I was reading the same script. I'm thinking, we're really on. This is good. All right, thank you. We need a second.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed to that very well done motion and second? By both of us. All right. We now have a quorum, right, Cindy?
Yes.
All right. I want to thank Larry Dietz. Where is he? The president of ISU. He has been very, very gracious to the Board of Higher Ed and in welcoming us today and welcoming all of us, but also the public at large. And I've gotten to know Larry a lot in the last few months as we've tried to confront the challenges facing higher ed in the state. Larry is not only the president of ISU, but he's also the convener of all of the presidents that are here in Illinois that are presidents of higher education institutions from a public standpoint. And Larry and I have had the privilege of going in to meet with the governor and the leaders of the General Assembly, and he does an incredible job for the institutions of higher education and balancing not only taking care of his university, which I think is a great university, but also all the others. He's very firm, he's very direct, he's very knowledgeable, he's very persistent, and you're lucky, and we are all lucky to have him in the leadership role on behalf of not only universities, but also the folks here at ISU. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Larry, and again, thanks for having us. I know he's going to welcome us.
Thank you, Chairman Cross, for those very generous remarks. I've enjoyed getting to know you and working with you as well, so thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Illinois State University. We're so glad that you could all be with us today. This building, as you know, is the Bone Student Center, and this facility is the one most utilized by our community for meetings and a large variety of other types of events. Beginning this fall, we will begin a renovation, the first in the history of this institution, of part of this facility. And I would be quick to say that there will be no state money involved with that at all. Trustee Bergman would want me to say that as our longest serving trustee at Illinois State University. but we were delighted to be able to save the money for this venture. So hopefully the next time that we host, you might be in a renovated facility. But we're delighted to have you here today. I also want to say that it's great to see our Trustee Bergman on this board as well as our board. He's been our longest serving member, and it's also great to see Jack Thomas, the president of Western Illinois University, as a new member of this board, and we appreciate that. We as a group of presidents and chancellors have also appreciated very much the collaboration and the partnership between the Illinois Board of Higher Education and its leadership, Tom Cross, but also Jim Applegate and all of his staff for the collaborative efforts that have helped us through a very, very tough time. While the university presidents and chancellors have often spoken with one voice this year, each of us in our institutions have a unique story to tell when we gather with students, faculty, alumni, and other university friends and stakeholders. The story at ISU has been a story of patience, perseverance, and frugality, and I think all of my colleagues would say the same about their institutions. All of ISU's accomplishments for academic year 2015-16 came during a period when the university received at least $60 million less than the previous year. On campus, we've managed this unprecedented cut by reducing spending dramatically. We've left vacant well over 100 administrative-related positions. We've pushed further back the timelines for non-safety related construction and maintenance projects. We've also curtailed large equipment purchases and professional travel and many, many other measures. My hat's off to our faculty and our staff and our students for being patient with us during this time. Still in the midst of all of that financial turmoil, we've managed to enroll the largest and most diverse freshman class since 1989, 3,632 students. Our graduation rate actually rose to 73.4%, and our retention rate has held at 81.3%, both of which are in the top 10% of all universities in the nation. Our student loan default rate actually dropped to 2.8% compared to the national default average of 11.7%. We also thought it would be a good idea this year to show our friends in Springfield that public universities like ISU play a major role in the local and state economy. An economic impact analysis released in April of this year showed spending by Illinois State University, its employees and its students directly contribute more than $550 million to the McLean County economy annually. That spending also returns more than $18 million in tax revenues to the area. Each institution would have their own story to tell that would be somewhat similar. It also has a secondary effect of supporting many local businesses. The money spent by Illinois State, its faculty, staff, and students is responsible for directly or indirectly creating more than 8,900 jobs in McLean County. And spending by those local businesses and their employees pumps more than $278 million of additional dollars into the area economy. In simple terms, $1.50 is returned to the McLean County economy for every dollar expended by Illinois State and its faculty, staff, and students. I know that most, if not all of you, who are presidents and chancellors in this room could say very similar things about how your campus impacts your community. And I think that's another important message we must continue to deliver to our state leaders. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank this board for its service and advocacy, and I want to thank Chairman Cross for his leadership and his ability to work with us collaboratively and help advance our cause in Springfield. I hope you'll enjoy an informative and productive day. Thank you so much for your service and for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, President Dietz. Obviously, we're going through tough times in this state, but you need strong leaders, and you need leaders that are willing to be strong and be strong advocates for their community and for their universities. And Larry's an example of that. As he said, you'd find examples of that at every institution. And so we're fortunate to have his leadership and that of all the other presidents that are here and who are not here today. So today we had lunch, and it was kind of, I would say, sponsored or put on, or as kind of the lead, was the Faculty Advisory Council. And Dr. Marie Donovan serves as this group's current chair, and she's going to give us a report in just a little bit. But we want to acknowledge the Faculty Advisory Council and their lunch today. I also am excited about this. We have 4 new board members. How about that? And I want to acknowledge them. I want them to just wave so you know who they are, if you have any questions about who they are. So the first one is John Babinick. John, right here. John, thank you for your willingness to serve. Champaign area. Good, appreciate it. Where's Jim Palos? Right here. Jim, thank you for being here. Jack Thomas. Jack, sporting those Western Illinois colors and the tie. I like those. Leathernecks, right? Am I right on that? Absolutely. Yeah, all right. Yes. And where's Kevin Huber, ex-official member? Kevin, thank you for being here, representing ISAC. And this is their first meeting, so thank you all for being here, and I think you're going to enjoy this board. Max Coffey and Alice Marie Jacobs got confirmed by the Senate. That's a good thing, isn't it? Yes. You think? Yeah, well, I'll ask you in a year. All right. And so not only do we have 4 new board members, but we have a board that's active, and we have a board that wants to be involved. And I just want to acknowledge a couple of those folks. Alice Marie is representing the board and the community college sector as a commission member for the Commission on the Future of the Workforce. It's been there since January, so thank you. Santos Rivera, where's Santos? Right over here next to my left. Actually a friend of a colleague of mine at Aurora University, Ted Pargy. But Santos contacted us a while back, not too long ago, and initiated his interest and willingness to serve as our liaison to the Diversifying Faculty Initiative Board, DFI, which was an exciting, I'm excited that he was willing to do that, and we've let that board know. And John Babinick just joined us, as we said, serving as our board liaison to the Illinois State Board of Education. Thank you for that. So we've got an active board and I think a proactive board, and that's very, very good. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in my comments. I'm going to turn over to Jim Applegate. But I think everybody in this room knows that we are in a really difficult time in the state, and I don't have to belabor the point. You all know it. You know it probably better than I do. But one thing, we talked a little bit about this in the president's meeting a little while ago before we got on here. I don't think we should all play defense in the world of higher education. We have excellent, excellent universities in the state of Illinois, both in the private and the public sector. And while we have kind of backed up and gotten into this survival mode in the university world, and I realize that in many ways, from a financial standpoint, you are, and we are doing what we can to help you get out of that survival mode and find a way to get a budget passed. As I said, Larry and I have been working, and as everybody in this room has. But we have to remember and remind people in the state of Illinois, both kids and parents and high schools, junior highs, that we have some of the best universities in the country. And we have a tendency to forget that when we go into this survival mode, and I don't think as a state, as an institution of Board of Higher Ed or any of your institutions, you should play defense. Play offense and remind people what a great, great state we do live in. There are some hiccups we're going through, I realize that, but remind people what great institutions you have, from U of I down to Southern Illinois and all across the country, all across the state. So my message is we need to be reminding people of how strong we are. And we talked about putting together a messaging or a campaign or a program to remind people of how strong we are. And I'm going to take that upon myself as the chair of this board to be very proactive doing that. And it's something I want to do, and I want to be part of with you as partners to make sure that we remind people of how good an institution, how good we have it with higher ed and with our universities. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jim Applegate. Before I do that, Jim, one thing I want to remind everybody about. We have talked about, as a board, a trustee conference for all the trustees of the boards of higher ed here in the state of Illinois. We tentatively have locked in October 27th to 28th. Probably need to make sure we have a budget by then, and I'm hopeful, keep my fingers crossed, that we'll have a budget. Lindsay Anderson is here, who preceded me on this board as the chair, and has been kind enough to offer McGuire Woods offices free to us in Chicago, if in fact, and I think we will hold this meeting, because I think we'll have a budget by then, on the 27th and 28th. It'll be an opportunity for people to come together from different universities. I think that's very healthy. And Lindsay, I appreciate your offer to do that at McGuire Woods, and we'll let you know more as we get closer about where we are budget-wise, and you'll all obviously know what's going on with the budget. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jim Applegate.
Thank you, Tom. So with your permission, I'm going to talk about something other than the budget, although it is related, I think, and I think it's in the same spirit that Tom has laid out in terms of being proactive and assertive about the positives that we need to bring forward about higher education in Illinois. These are difficult times. We'll have a panel later at this meeting that will talk about what's going on, but also a path forward, we hope. But I found that in all of this, as I've been dealing with it the last year, that reading can be therapeutic. So as depressing and demotivating sometimes as things can be, I would just suggest for those who want to rise above the negativity, Greg Easterbrook's new book, The Progress Paradox, How Life Gets Better When People Feel Worse. When I read that book, I was also reminded of another wonderful book that I read just recently by Stephen Johnson called Future Perfect, The Case for Progress in a Networked Age. When I read these books, first of all, I learned that despite the repeated claims that everything is terrible, that in fact a lot of good and trending upward is happening both in our nation and in the state of Illinois. As Easterbrook documents, among a long list of positives, unemployment is below where it was in the good old days in the 90s, and job growth is strong. America's economy, #1 in the world, is larger than China's and Japan's combined. Pollution, crime, and most diseases have been declining for a long time, while living standards, life expectancy, and education levels have been on the rise. In Illinois, we just talked about this morning in our higher ed system specifically. Recent national data has shown that if you start full-time at a private or public university in Illinois, you have a 9 out of 10 chance of getting a baccalaureate degree in 6 years. We're third in the nation in the number of students who leave community colleges and go on to universities for a degree. We have the highest completion rates for students starting at public universities part-time, more than 2 times the national average. And I should say that all these are way above the national average. Illinois has the highest completion rate for adult learners. We want a lot more of them, but we do well with the ones we have. 50% higher than the national average. Illinois is 4th in the nation in completion for full-time community students, and on and on and on. So there is a lot going on, and in short, in so many areas, we are, as Nancy Zimpfert SUNY calls it, trending upward. And that's really important, I think, for us to know in these difficult times, because there's a whole lot of psychological research that tells us there are few more powerful human motivators than evidence of progress, a belief that what we are doing is working. If we hope to keep improving, we must stay the course on the good work that has been done, sometimes over decades. Now, in his book, one of the examples Easterbrook gives is that we're in a period of unparalleled airline safety and aviation safety. So for all of us who travel, we can knock on wood at this point. But that reference to aviation safety took me back to Johnson's book, Future Perfect. The book reminds us that U.S. history is replete with effective change movements made up of problem-focused optimists. Early in Future Perfect, Johnson bemoans the misconceptions that undercut some of our progress, and that is largely a belief in heroes and miracles. We fail to understand that civil rights progress was the result of thousands of people finding common cause over decades and did not spring full form when Martin Luther King had a dream. That income security for the elderly did not spring miraculously from one legislative act. Most recently, Johnson notes that our focus on an event that I'm sure most of you, you'll know what I'm talking about, the Miracle on the Hudson, where a plane was hit by a bird and landed safely and there were no casualties. And it was a miracle. That was what it was called. And the heroes were the captain and the crew. Well, as it turns out, and I've checked this with some aviation folks in our own higher ed system, this is pretty accurate. The reason those people are alive is because years and years ago, thousands of people in the aviation industry confronted a higher than desirable mortality rate in our airline due to air crashes. And they spent a lot of time working together, engineers and aviation people, to figure out what was causing those crashes. And they worked together to fix the problem. And 2 things they really realized were a problem for planes were, 1, that engines blew up, split apart, and caught fire too easily, and navigation systems went out too easily. So they worked really hard on that. So when those birds hit that plane over the Hudson, the engine did not catch fire, it did not disintegrate, it did not destroy the plane, it just stopped. And when the captain was landing the plane, his guidance system was still in place. So he knew that he was level and that his wings weren't tilted. And that actually is why those people are alive today. Now, this is to take nothing away from the captain and crew, or Martin Luther King, or Lyndon Johnson for that matter. But it is to worry that when we see things in terms of heroes and miracles, we are a lot more likely to, as a people, sit around and wait for a hero and a miracle to happen. That susceptibility is heightened when we feel hopeless. So I would just suggest that what we're talking about here today and moving forward is a rediscovery of our pragmatic, can-do American spirit. As a state and as a country, as individuals, we must find motivation in the many areas where we are trending upward, and we are trending upward in a lot of areas. President Desch just mentioned some others for Illinois State. We must imbue ourselves with hope. We must seek out those people and initiatives that have produced the progress that we have documented and that have pointed to a path to progress. We must band together knowing the work will be long and hard. I know this is possible because I've seen it over the last few years here in Illinois. Regions and communities in Illinois across the country come together in just this way to make their places better. I just came back from Quad Cities in a really inspiring convening of over 200 employers and educators and others that are committed over the long haul to make that region work. So if we can put political party, ideology, deficit thinking, and pessimism on the shelf and honestly measure our progress and share the responsibility for implementing these strategies, that pragmatic American spirit can be reclaimed, trending upward, building on real successes, motivated and confident that rather than a quagmire, we can find a path to solutions and a better future and a more humane society. And I think the discussions we're having now about looking forward and believing in our system are exactly those kinds of discussions, and I look forward for the IBHE to be part of those discussions with all of you. Thank you.
Jim, thank you very much. Appreciate your optimism. Immensely, thank you. Speaking of optimism, we have some young students who will be taking on different roles in life, and we want to honor them for being on our board. We have Sean Anderson. We'll go first, and I think, Jane, do you have a resolution? Yes. Okay. Would you present that?
Sean, would it be appropriate for you to come on up?
Sure.
Yes. Thank you.
Sean Anderson. We, the members of the Illinois Board of Higher Education, extend our deep appreciation and esteem to Sean Anderson for his dedicated service to college students in Illinois and his contributions to the board as its student representative during the past 2 years. Sean has been a valuable student voice, especially on college affordability issues. When Sean began his service on the board, he indicated that he wanted to help ensure that all students who want to go to college have an opportunity where they could pursue an education regardless of resources. He has admirably represented on many occasions in Chicago and around the state those students with data and compelling examples. His contributions on the board action teams for increasing affordability and advocacy for quality higher education were significant. He also brought attention to legislative efforts needed to prevent sexual assault and provide supportive services when necessary on college campuses, and worked with the IBHE Student Advisory Committee to advocate for the enactment of the Preventing Sexual Violence in Higher Education Act, Public Act 99-426. We applaud Sean's impressive roster of accomplishments and experiences throughout his college career. Sean graduated from Roosevelt University with a degree in business management. He was an inaugural Four Freedoms Fellow at Roosevelt, which allowed him to take a leadership role in advocacy efforts at the university. While pursuing his degree, he has had many professional experiences, including public affairs and marketing positions at Kivett and Vanderweel Group in Chicago. We will miss Sean's dedicated presence and his spirit of public service in representing Illinois students at the IBHE board table. However, Illinois will continue to be served by Sean as he is currently a communications associate at World Business Chicago, a public-private partnership that drives regional economic development to put Chicago at the forefront of the global economy. We wish him well in his future endeavors. And I just want to add that I am going to miss you so much, Sean. And I said only in jest, but this morning in our advocacy action team, that I feel like Sean and Tyler are two of the greatest accomplishments that the IBHE board has developed in the last couple of years that I've been on the board. You are really a great leader, and I know you're going to do wonderful things in the future, and hopefully on behalf of Illinois for the long term.
Sean. Whoa, wait a second. Yeah, Jane, thank you. Sean, you want to say something? Please
I just
do.
want to say, thank you for the acknowledgements and thank you for allowing me to serve for the past 2 years. It's an important moment in my life, and so I just want to tell my story real quick. I grew up in Naperville, Illinois, with a single mother. She kept me in Naperville despite our family being from the South Suburbs because she wanted to make sure I went to a good school. And unfortunately, I lost her about a month before I graduated high school, so I've been putting myself through school ever since. And it's been a long struggle. It's been 6 years, but and no, she was not at my high school graduation, nor was she at my college graduation, but serving on this board has made it worth it. It's made that okay, because I told her before she passed that I wanted a career where I can impact the lives of others, not just people like myself, the African American community, but just the lives of everyone in this country, and really in the world, because I'm growing up in a generation where we're connected to people in London and in Africa and South Korea on my phone right now. I can start talking to them. So really a global landscape that I want to impact, and it started right here on this board. And I knew that it was going to be a board under divided government, but that didn't stop me. And so I very much appreciate Chairman Cross's suggestion that we not play defense. Despite the impasse, I helped to, along with Tyler, we helped to make sure that we got new legislation to address campus sexual assaults. And we got in at the perfect moment in the legislative process to make sure that we were helping not just frame the policy, but also get the bill passed. We have worked on performance funding for institutions and to make sure that the model is accurately reflective of today's student population, not yesterday's. We've been working with college affordability to produce a white paper that has recommendations, again, to make sure college is affordable for today's student population, not yesterday's. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work with the board members, to have your mentorship, to meet all the institutions and your administration and the presidents. And thank you all very much for this honor. It's been a great 2 years, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to make sure that I'm still involved in higher education in any way that I can. In World Business Chicago, we do partner with some institutions, particularly the U of I system. So I'll still be around. I'll still be contributing in whatever way I can. And again, thank you all very much. It's an honor.
Thank you, Sean. It makes me feel just a little better about the future. Thank you very much. That was very compelling, inspiring. Christine, you have a resolution. We're gonna recognize Tyler Solario. Excuse me, Tyler. That's very bad on my part, but come on up and we have a good resolution.
Hey, Tyler, come and join me.
Yeah, Tyler, thank you. You just wrote it there, Solario.
We, the members of the Illinois Board of Higher Education, extend our deep appreciation and esteem to Tyler Solario for his dedicated service to college students in Illinois and his contributions to the board as its non-traditional student representative during the past 2 years. While serving on the IBHE, Tyler has been an exemplary advocate for students on several current issues. He provided leadership as the convener for the action team on increasing non-traditional and adult completion aligned with state economic development and workforce needs. He's been an effective voice for all students, including support for MAP financial assistance, preventing sexual assault on college campuses, as you've heard, and improving the opportunity for military credit toward completion from veterans and members of the armed services. He served as an invited panelist to discuss the student's perspective on higher education issues before the Illinois House of Representatives. We express our sincere gratitude to Tyler for his service in the United States Army National Guard. He enlisted in the Army National Guard in 2009 and was deployed to Afghanistan, serving in the military police as a member of the Quick Reaction Force. Tyler was awarded the Army Commendation Medal and a Combat Action Badge for actions during Operation Enduring Freedom. Tyler graduated from DePaul University with a degree in urban studies and a minor in organizational communication. Before attending DePaul, Tyler was enrolled at Butte Community College in California and then came to Illinois and attended Oakton Community College. Tyler plans to enroll in graduate school, and we likewise hope he will continue his academic pursuits in Illinois. We thank Tyler for his commitment and excellent service to Illinois college students and spirit of public service in representing Illinois' non-traditional students who persevere to college completion and contribute to our state's economic and social vitality. Signed by the Illinois Board of Higher Education and dated June 21st, 2016. And I would mention that all of us, no matter where we are, for what institutions we represent, we are all about the students, and we have seen here the service of two of the very best. Thank you.
Congratulations, Tyler. Tyler, do you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Good. You got the mic. Go ahead.
It's been an honor. I didn't imagine myself in this position. Initially, before I arrived in this position, I arrived as a critic. I was vice president over at Oakton Community College Student Government, and the Student Advisory Committee came to me and they outlined what plans that they wanted to achieve. And initially, when I saw the plans, I kind of paused and I was like, this is as far as you're going? And they were like, yeah, this is what we've built. And I was like, it's not far enough. And the retort was for me to run for this position. And so here I am 2 years later. And fortunately, I've been in service with Sean, and I couldn't have done it with a better person. And I couldn't have expected what this past 2 years was going to be like. We had been elected to the position right before the talk of the budget happened, before we knew what was going to be the budget impasse, and before we saw everything that came within those 2 years. And it's been rough watching my fellow students, watching what they've had to go through. I've been fortunate in how I've been able to manage the system. Like Sean, I'm financially independent. I've been putting myself through college this whole time. And being able to witness the effects and the impacts as a leader in educational policy and seeing what was happening to my fellow students on the ground simultaneously, and at times protesting with them in the streets. I think about how critical this position is, about how critical we are as board members, and that fortunately Sean and I, we were elected by students here. And so that means we're directly accountable to the students. But ultimately, as board members, our job first and foremost is the colleges. And when we think of the colleges and we think of the universities, first among them is students. And when we think of whatever actions we commit, whenever we think about what arguments we have to take or what politics that we have to engage in, everything we do here, even though we are leaders, is servants. We are public servants. And we are the servants to higher education within the state of Illinois. And every step that we take and everything that we do has to be on behalf of the students. And every fight that we do has to be on behalf of the students, whether this means that at the end of the day, we're not going to make any friends and we're going to piss a lot of people off. But that's how we have to treat it in every step of the way. And I'd like to think before I step down, the agency, in my capacity on the Student Advisory Committee, we work with them all the time, and honestly, they are the backbone, and I feel they will never get enough recognition for all the work that they do. And I'm eternally grateful to work with an agency such as this. So with that said, thank you for everything. I appreciate my time here, and thank you again.
Thank you, Tyler. Tyler Solorio. We go through, we've gone through or going through some tough times in government, obviously, in this state and the country. And you guys remind people of how important public service is. So thank you, and that we need good people in public service. And so we have you guys, and I hope you continue to have some interest in that as you move forward in life, wherever you end up. So thank you. Christine and Jane, thank you for taking the lead on that. So let's move on to the Faculty Advisory Council report. Dr. Marie Donovan. Thank you, Dr. Donovan.
Thank you, Chairman Cross. We missed you at lunch. We truly did, but we understood that the presidents needed you more.
Well, I didn't think there was any food left. That's why I left. But I didn't know if there was a message there or what, but we're okay.
We saved you a little. And as a matter of fact, at our luncheon today, we passed a resolution honoring a long-serving member of our council, Mr. John Bennett. If you wouldn't mind standing, John Bennett from Lakeland College. John is retiring after a few decades in higher education in Illinois, as well as retiring officially. This is his last meeting as well from the FAC. And our lunch conversation got moving at such a speed and people got so involved in it that we ran out of time for serving the cake. And so please, over there, in honor of John and in honor of just let's celebrate graduation for Sean and Tyler and everybody else, please enjoy some of John's cake. I'm here, as you know, on behalf of the Faculty Advisory Council. And before I get into my remarks, I would like to ask my colleagues on the FAC, as we call ourselves for short, to rise, please, so you can see who's here.
Thank you.
And thank you again. And so, Chairman of the Board, Mr. Cross, and members of the Board, Executive Director, Dr. Applegate, and IBHE agency colleagues, and all others who have gathered here today. I'm pleased to enjoy the distinct privilege to stand here on behalf of the Faculty Advisory Council and share an update on our work, as well as our aims for what presently can only be characterized as the forecasted tumultuous months ahead. For over 50 years, the FAC has reliably and faithfully served in an advisory capacity to the Illinois Board of Higher Education. The FAC's advisory role was shaped and designated by the founding members of the board as a way to ensure their thinking would be consistently and dispassionately informed by those who work most closely with post-secondary students of all kinds in Illinois institutions. That is, full-time, tenure-track faculty. As veteran board members are aware, the FAC is a unique body, not only in our state, but also, from what our research tells us, our country. Our members represent 2- and 4-year institutions, public as well as private and proprietary institutions. We hail from all disciplines: sciences, arts, humanities, the social sciences. We meet monthly from September through June all around the state, hosted by our member institutions, so that we can go there and learn firsthand how fellow faculty develop curricula and hone instructional approaches to meet the learning needs of their students and the 21st century world of work. Now, since 2009, the FAC has been focused primarily on providing the necessary research and experience to the board for advancing the Illinois public agenda for college and career success. During academic year 2015-16, our work toward this end included interacting with IBHE agency staff to provide feedback and suggestions for legislative proposals focused on higher ed budget, dual credit standards, prior learning credit, K-12 assessment, and pension reform. We engaged with senior administrators and local state legislators at hosting sites to learn and to deliberate the role of higher ed institutions in their areas throughout the state as a way to deepen our expertise in looking systematically at what must be done to support students in gaining the knowledge and skills they need not only for today, but for tomorrow. This year, our members served on various task forces and work groups around the state, including those sponsored by the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning, CAL, on prior learning assessment, as well as those that were focused on military prior learning credit in particular. One of our members, Steve Rock from Western Illinois, was elected to serve as a trustee on SERS, thereby providing us on the FAC further perspective and data to use in our work with IBHE agency staff and, of course, with you, our board. We also collaborated this year with students in advocating for the restoration of MAP funding and in researching the cost related to textbooks and other instructional materials. We will be returning to the latter by devoting one of our first meetings of the new academic year to holding a focused dialogue on instructional delivery mechanisms and materials with the publishing executives, campus bookstore managers, librarians, students, as well as the executive director of the Association of American Publishers Higher Ed Division. We will be sure to invite you, members of the board, to come and learn with us, as well as to debate with us once the date and location are settled. So stay tuned for that, please. Now, I started my remarks by noting some of the FAC's history. I now turn your attention to some later history of faculty involvement with you as a board. In late 2005, after much bipartisan and multiple stakeholder involvement, statute governing this board's composition was amended to include a designated seat for a faculty member from an Illinois public university. As is often the case with such appointments in our state, your board and we on the FAC were finally tasked in 2010 with establishing the mechanism for researching and vetting candidates for gubernatorial approval to this seat. In 2011, the first faculty member, Alan Carnes of SIU Carbondale, assumed this role. Upon Alan's retirement from his university in 2015, the FAC fulfilled its responsibility to the board and sent forth for the governor's consideration 2 tenured faculty members from public universities. As you are aware, the governor did not recommend either of our candidates, nor did he provide any rationale for ignoring our recommendations when he named Dr. Carnes' replacement, Mr. John Bamenek, who has worked as an adjunct instructor, important to note, at U of I, Urbana-Champaign. Now, there's been much reported and bandied about in the press and in other areas of cyberspace regarding this appointment. But I must call everyone's attention to what I explained at the beginning of these remarks today. The FAC was designated and constituted by the original board so that you could rely upon a dedicated group of faculty who would consistently and dispassionately inform your work. We remain so, despite being in disagreement with the governor's decision and frankly offended by his disregard for our position. Further, for those of you who are not aware, Mr. Bamenek, Dr. Sean Schumacher, the vice chair of the FAC, and I met informally in person at Mr. Bamenek's suggestion a few weeks ago to share our concerns and thoughts surrounding what has become a controversy between the governor and Illinois tenure-track faculty. As part of this discussion, Dr. Schumacher and I made it clear that the FAC's locus of concern is on the need for a missing critical stakeholder group to be part of the voting membership on your board, namely faculty whose full-time job it is to be developing high-quality, relevant curricula, teaching, advising, and assessing students against 21st century learning standards, and conducting the research that Illinois institutions, employers, and other citizens have counted upon for over 100 years. We suggested to Mr. Bamenek that he share with the governor a solution to the problem engendered by the governor's decision, namely that he shift, that Governor Rauner shift Mr. Bamenek into the remaining public seat on your board and then recommend to the Senate a full-time tenured faculty member from a public institution, one whom the FAC researches and vets as part of its long-time responsibilities for this designated faculty seat. Mr. Bamenek listened to our proposal and promptly followed through on forwarding our recommendation to the governor. We thank him again more publicly now for his doing so. Thank you. Yeah, truly, thank you. Nevertheless, we are yet to hear anything from the governor. Now, I'm offering these remarks at an unprecedented time in Illinois' history. We've much work to do in educating each other as well as our fellow citizens about what higher education institution, higher education's people do and why. As movements continue in closing and/or consolidating programs, we urge you, members of our board, to step forth and critique those proposals and to ask the tough question: are we streamlining a system or are we rationing education? And as you ask yourselves and each other that tough question, we trust that you will seek counsel from us, your Faculty Advisory Council. We're here for you. We're ready to be working on solutions. And we too, Mr. Cross, Chairman Cross, we too don't want to be working on defense. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say, one point, I just don't want to let it go. The chairman of SERS, I might have been a member of the General Assembly when we created the person that became the chairman of the Board of Higher Ed is also the chairman of SERS. And I bet I voted for that bill, too. But Steve Rock is on the board of SERS and does an incredible job. And for those of you as faculty members should know, Steve is very, very good at what he does. So, Steve, thank you. I know you're here. So I'm enjoying working with him. Let's move on to action team reports. So we have advocacy for quality higher education. Board Member Hayes, you ready to go?
Yes. Well, this morning, we decided to dispense with too much prolonged discussion about the budget impasse, which we have spent, a lot. And to primarily focus our discussion on the portion of the IBHE Advocacy Action Plan that deals with employer engagement. Dr. Applegate can maybe supplement my comments if there are any questions, but at the moment, I'll just let you know that there is the Commission on the Future of the Workforce in progress that IBHE is very much a part of, and the goal of that is to gather data regionally and create a report that will show where are the shortages of trained and educated workers in Illinois from the business perspective, the employer perspective, both today and what they projected to be into the future. And once we have that, then we will be able to gather that data and provide it back to the higher education community in Illinois so that that can hopefully inform their planning as they go into the future. And as an advocacy action team this morning, we talked about what IBHE might do to supplement that effort to increase employer engagement in our work. In other words, come up with, hopefully over time, a plan that's based on input from the business and employer community as to what they need, and then show employers in the business community some ways that they can help directly. That might be by providing tuition assistance, that might be by providing reimbursement to employees pursuing certain kinds of degrees of study. We haven't planned all that yet, but we talked about that as being perhaps a more productive way for us in the coming months to focus our advocacy efforts, especially in the face of the continuing stalemate in Springfield. So, any questions? That concludes my report.
Jane, thank you. Christine, you want to go next? Thank you.
Right. Our action team is the Improving Affordability Action Team, and as most of the people in this room are aware, we completed a final report which was circulated in December of last year. So the purpose of our meeting this morning was to focus on implementation, or what implementation might mean for such a report. So we asked ourselves a number of questions. Was it possible to set interim goals for a period between perhaps 2018 and 2022, which is commensurate with the Department of Education report on current statistics? We asked whether it was possible to define metrics to monitor progress on goals that were consistent with the public agenda, to identify what was working or not working, and then finally to recommend policy changes based upon those findings, such as the truth in tuition or procurement reform. But as the action team met and discussed those items, it was determined that before we could identify goals, it was important to gather and share data that had been amassed. And in that regard, the IBHE staff have now nearly completed, pursuant to the white paper recommendation, an effectiveness and efficiency report based on the recommendations of the affordability white paper and the self-reported data from all of the public institutions who, continue to supply that data. we decided that that data needs to be shared with the institutions themselves before we talk at all about implementation, and that will be done. Other data to be shared shortly, I think, with all of you is the FY15 Academic Discipline Cost Study and the FY15 Annual Report on Academic Programs. Again, it's data that's available, and it's data that needs to be shared. The other idea and focus was to acknowledge the importance of MAP to affordability for all students in the state of Illinois. And with that understanding, the action team decided that it would meet again in August or convene again in August to determine next steps after everyone had had a chance to review those reports. We also thought that it might be a good idea, given what is occurring, to share data or to circulate data or to share reactions to data based not so much on designation as type of institution perhaps, but as coverage in a particular regional area, because many times the programmatic issues, the demographic, et cetera, are more common to the regional areas than they are to institutions by dint of classification. So we will have a further report in August after we reconvene.
Christine, thanks. Thanks both to you and Jane. Teresa, ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Reducing attainment gaps.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman Cross. So I think the word of today's groups are regional. I've heard it twice already, and our groups, which focused on closing the attainment gap for underrepresented groups, also led us to a discussion of the need to work together across the state and more in regions instead of independent communities or independent types of institutions. This group has been reconstituted a little bit. I actually wasn't the convener until today. So I apologize if I have not the full picture, but my understanding is that obviously this is a critical action group and was on its path towards producing a white paper and has been stalled, but we had a small group of members today, but a mighty group, including our new board member, Jim Palos, so thank you for being with us. And we really focused on the need to bring all of the institutions, not just the public universities and the community colleges, which is my seat on the board, is who I represent, obviously are doing trying very hard to serve this population, but also the private institutions, and really think about what as a state we need to do around this paradigm shift, and really trying to assess the needs of our residents and trying to meet the needs of our residents, which includes workforce. So I was glad to hear Jane's first report talking about the business community. And so it's not just about closing the gaps, but it's really about understanding why the gaps keep getting bigger when we know there's a greater need to employ people and to contribute to our workforce. So what we've decided to do as a group is to continue the initial recommendations, which is to convene a group potentially sometime in the fall to hear from the universities. The publics, of course, are our focus, but definitely keep it open to anybody who wants to join us to understand the data that's shared annually in the underrepresented groups report, which talks about the gaps, but also asks the universities to provide best practices, initiatives, things that they are doing that they believe are helping them close those gaps. Now, unfortunately, the staff of IBHE is fantastic, but under-resourced, and they have a department of one, I've been told. So Arthur has been great in trying to support this group, but I think he will need our help. And one of the things that we are interested in looking at is really assessing all of these initiatives that are happening in our public institutions to try to reduce those gaps, and in our community colleges, are they really effective? How are they effective? And how do we regionalize this work so that it has a greater impact across the state? That's about it. Anything else to add, Chris? No? Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That was really good. And I apologize. Anybody have questions of any of the three? We've got one more from Tyler, and I didn't, there may be questions, and I don't want to stop anyone from asking. It was well done the way you presented it succinctly. Thank you very much, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Tyler, you have one?
Yeah.
You still aren't off the board, are you? You still got work to do.
Yeah,
Thank you. Go ahead.
of course. So we're finalizing our rough draft right now for the white paper that we've been developing over the past few sessions. This white draft is this white paper is looking at the status quo of what it is to be a non-traditional learner or an adult learner within the state of Illinois, which fortunately we've come across some good data, as Jim has mentioned earlier, about how really when we look at comparative educational statistics, we are in pretty top spots in the nation, even though there's still room for improvement. And so the white paper seeks to address that. It's a broad field, so to go point by point, I think it would just be better to wait for the white paper to be published. And, but we're also going to be looking at solutions for that. So that was just roughly the meeting today, was finalizing the rough draft.
Well, thank you, and thanks again for your work. Anybody have any questions before we move on? These committees that do it, working groups do a nice job, and I appreciate what they're doing. There are plenty of issues out there. Sure, Jim.
I'd just say I had a chance to briefly sit in with the adult group, and I think they're coming up with some really strong recommendations based on their analysis of what we need to do. It's probably nothing that's being mentioned isn't being done somewhere in Illinois. That's always the case. But I think what you guys are really looking at is how do we scale that up? We have so many, 1 out of 5 workers in Illinois have some college and no degree, et cetera. And how do we scale that up so that we are truly providing pathways to degrees that matter for hundreds of thousands of people, actually, that we're going to have to gear up our capacity to address. So I appreciate the thought that's gone into those recommendations.
Anyone else? All right, I want to be cognizant of time, so we're going to move along here and go to Dr. Karen Hunter Anderson, Executive Director of the Illinois Community College Board, who's going to talk about their 50th anniversary celebration. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Cross, and members of the Board of Higher Education. It really is a pleasure for me to be here today to talk about something, continuing on the tone of being positive, to talk about something very positive. The only thing I have to say is, what a year to celebrate a 50th anniversary. But we did it, I think, with great pizzazz, and most of you are very well aware of the value of the community college system in Illinois. So I will be very brief and just go through a short presentation for you here today to share with you some of the highlights of the history of our system. Fortunately, 50 years ago, Illinois saw the value of creating a higher education system that would be a community college education system that would be of value to all of the residents in Illinois. And so that's why when they looked at issues like accessibility, efficiency, and relevance to people in the community, they were wise to form the junior college system in Illinois. But it started much earlier than that. Back in 1901, we had the first junior college was established in the country here in Illinois. Joliet Junior College was established. In 1937, the Junior College Act went into law. In 1943, legislation was adopted to set up the rates in support of the junior college operations. In 1955, we came up with state funding for colleges, first appropriated. Be nice to do that again. Sorry, couldn't resist. In 1959, they separated the junior college districts and boards were authorized. And then in 1965, which is the 50th year that we're celebrating now, the Junior College Act was adopted. And this laid the foundation for the community college system that we have today. In '73, we changed the term junior to community to reflect what the trend was, that we were no longer looked at as colleges that would be only an entryway to the four-year universities, but also that one of the primary purposes of our colleges was to serve the communities in which they served. You will notice that all of the colleges in Illinois, all 48 community colleges, have the term either college or community college in their name, with the exception of one, and that's Joliet Junior College. And because they were the first in the nation, they decided for historical purposes that they would always remain with the name Joliet Junior College. If you look across the country, you will see that there are very few colleges that continue to use the term junior college in their name. In 1999, in 1990, we had the last junior college, a community college established, and we had community college districts in all part of the state that were accessible to all of the residents. Our newest community college in the state was Heartland Community College, and we're very pleased to have Rob Widmer, the president, here with us today.
Hi, this is Toy.
Hi, Toy. Who are you trying to call?
Oh, hi. I am trying to reach Dr. Alexander and...
I'm sorry, Toy. You have the wrong
Wrong
number.
one?
Yes. And-
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
Thank
okay.
you.
No worries. I shouldn't have let her go that long, but I don't know what else to do.
That's a good point. As long as it wasn't a collect call.
What did you want me to do?
He's worried about.
I was worried it was a collect call. I don't think we can afford it. Did you hang up on her?
I can't hang up because it's, right, the line is
All right,
open.
Go ahead, Karen, sorry.
That's all right. I've never had that happen before. 50 years, yeah. So here we are today in 2016, and we have 48 community colleges in the state of Illinois. We are the third largest in the nation in terms of the number of community colleges. We're also, depending on whose data you look at, between third and fifth in terms of the number of students we serve. Our statewide economic impact is $3.1 billion. We contribute to the state. And last year we did economic impact studies for all of our community colleges and for the state. And we determined that on an average, a student who graduates from a community college will expect a lifetime earning gains of well over $500,000. And when you look at the amount of dollars that each community college contributes to their local community, it's certainly worth seeing. We have some clips here to show you of some of our more distinguished members, some of our prestige members. And before we get into these, I would like to welcome the new board members on IBHE. And I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank all of the people, the individuals like Mr. Terry Bruce here, who we're going to hear from in a second, for the contributions they've made to our system. And those individuals include not only our presidents, but our board members as well, the board members at ICCB, certainly the faculty and staff of all of our community colleges, the staff members at ICCB, and of course, our almost million students that we serve every year. And without any of those entities, we would not be the best system that we are today. Whoops, I'm sorry. I'm not sure how this is going to operate.
Is someone supposed to do it?
Somebody just needs to tell me what button to press, if there is a button to press. That's all right. Thank you. Oh, good, perfect. "50 years ago, we couldn't have done this. We have, I'm not sure we're able to do it today. Okay, that's all right. Well, if you were able to hear Mr. Bruce talk, one of the things he would tell you was about, he would, in his own words, would tell you very much of what I just said, in terms of the value of a junior college versus a community college. And we are very proud of that aspect. And so I'm going to go on, and maybe we'll be able to get back and hear his wise words. There are a number of things that you can see here. We're doing a comparison between then and now. This was the first map and from 50 years ago, and this was the number of community colleges or junior colleges that we had back then. And as you can see by the map on my right, now we are covering the entire state. So no student should have any difficulty finding a community college within their residence with a very short drive to take so that they can access a variety of different programs and opportunities at their community college. 50 years ago, 3/4 of all the course offerings were baccalaureate. Today, that's about half. And the reason is because 50 years ago, we only had 266 occupational programs. As most of you know, community colleges serve a wide variety of students. They serve the students who are planning to go on to a 4-year degree, get a baccalaureate degree, a master's degree, a doctorate, and wherever they want to go in terms of an education and graduate education. We also serve those students who want to get training and education and certification so that they can immediately enter into the workforce. And so today we offer over 615 new programs just in this year alone, in 2016 alone, that are considered to be career and tech ed or vocational programs. 50 years ago, we had programs like Key Punch. Some of you remember that. Bookkeeping, woodworking, metalworking. One of the things I like to talk about is back then, someone could get a certificate or an associate's degree in metalworking and go into the workforce, and that's all they needed. Today, you can get a master's degree in sheet metal work. Today, we have things like photon therapy, and please don't ask me what that is, but we offer a course in it, and it's or a program in it, and it's something that is well thought of in the medical community. We have nanotechnology programs. One of my favorites is the Unmanned Aircraft Systems program, and that's drones. And I had the pleasure of speaking with a faculty member in that program, and he said that they work with a lot of, certainly with a lot of federal organizations that are very interested in the training components that are provided through that program. And of course, we have a number of green programs in sustainable design. Back in 50 years ago, 22 of 38 colleges offered programs cooperating with business and industry, providing direct access to the workforce needs, and today all 48 of our colleges offer programs that in collaboration with their workforce, or with their local businesses and industry. You can see how certainly if you've been on a campus, community college campus recently, maybe you've had a chance to see the 3D design work that they do, or some of the healthcare simulations. And you know, we're very proud of the technology training that we provide our students. Mike Monahan, who also will have wise words of wisdom for you maybe at some point here, we'll talk about the value of, again, a community college education in providing the needs of a local community. We've also seen some dramatic changes in terms of our enrollment. 50 years ago, we had a fall enrollment of full-time students or full-time equivalency of 62,000 back in 1996. Today, that full-time enrollment is, or equivalency is 316, over 316,000. We had 60,000 students 50 years ago enrolled in non-credit courses. Today we have 182,000. You know, we were teaching non-credit courses like stock market and some academic refresher courses, but today we do a lot of personal enrichment, foreign languages for travelers, and culinary arts. Our completions have skyrocketed from 12,000 50 years ago to over 71,000 completions annually in 2015. But one of the most striking differences is in the tuition. Our tuition in 1967 averaged only $4 a credit hour. It's only $4 a credit hour. So you can imagine, multiply that, and you will see that the annual tuition for a full-time student was very low. Today, our tuition, we still consider to be quite reasonable, both in terms of the state opportunities and across the country, and the average is $125,000. And it wasn't very long ago when we felt some angst in the system because our average tuition exceeded $100 a credit hour. We still consider ourselves to be one of the best values, not only in the state, but in the country. Peg Lee is one of the presidents who has retired from the system. She retired last year from Oakton Community College, and I'm sure, Tyler, she was there when you were there, a very distinguished president. She was one of the people who, she started the first nanotechnology program in the state. We've had a number of opportunities to celebrate this year. We're very proud of our 50th of the success we've had over 50 years. Dr. Warren is the president at Lincoln Land Community College. She served as the president of our President's Council this past year. She did extra duty at the state capitol, and we were very fortunate that she was in Springfield. One of the things that she would tell you, if we were able to play this clip, is that we're finally coming into our own in terms of community colleges, that the nation is finally recognizing our value. And that's something that's extremely important to us, that there have been a lot of misconceptions about community colleges, that they are, you know, an extension of high school, that they are the junior college, and we're finally getting credit for the value that we serve to students, that we're finding because of the research that's been done, that students who started a community college are as likely, if not more likely, to succeed at a four-year university than the native students there, but also that they go on to do a wide variety of things. And that even though we serve many at-risk students, we don't just serve those that are first generation or that have challenges in terms of higher ed, but we also serve those that come out as salutatorians and valedictorians of their classes and who plan on going on. Students more and more seeing the value of starting their college education, their higher education at a community college. And with that, I'd like to just end with a couple of notes. One, many of you have heard me say over and over again that the community college is the best system, community college system in the world. And I do say that with some level of confidence because, as I mentioned before, we are around the third in the nation in terms of the number of students that we serve and the number of colleges that we have in our system. But it's really more than that, because if you look at the efficiency with which we serve our students, if you look at things like the comprehensive nature of our colleges, of being able to get short-term workforce training programs, or to be able to start, if you're wanting to be a doctor or lawyer, to be able to start that program there. If you look at all of those things, and if you look at the balance between the local control that our colleges have, as well as their value is collaborating as a system, then I think you can say we're definitely the best in the country. And having visited a number of places and talked to a number of other people from other countries who are trying to set up community college systems or something like that to, as they recognize that more and more students in other countries need this kind of training. I can honestly say that we are a global model, and that makes us the best in the world. And so I would like to end on a positive note and say our future is really what's the most valuable to us, not the past. We have a very good past upon which to build, but really when we look at the direction we should be going, we've got, with this kind of a past behind us, the future is in front of us, a very bright future is in front of us, and we look forward to being playing a very critical role of higher education and workforce in the state of Illinois. Thank you very
Karen,
much.
thank you very much. Before you, hold on, don't leave. Karen, wait, Karen, hold on, wait. We got two things. Any questions of Karen? All right, and then, if not, Jay Bergman has something he wants to share with you.
Karen, you may have noticed that the prior two resolutions were in leather folios. Well, now we don't have a budget, and they were our last two, so. A couple real brief comments. One is you mentioned Joliet Junior College, first community college in the nation, first junior college in the nation. The other part of the story is it was set up initially by the University of Chicago to be a feeder school. Now, this was a radical thought at the time, and they started graduating early on to students from Joliet Junior College. But frankly, they found out that the students from Joliet, frankly, just were not smart enough to succeed at the University of Chicago. Now, the fact that I might be from Joliet and didn't go to the University of Chicago has, I don't know, maybe that's saying something. But the other thing that I just briefly add is, as Karen indicated, the act was passed on July 15th, 1965. The first time that any schools operated under the act was for the years starting September, the academic year starting September 1966. I was a member of the Joliet Junior College class of 1966-67, 67-68. Anyway, to the resolution. Whereas on July 15th, 1965, the Illinois Public Community College Act was enacted, and whereas the Illinois Community College system has expanded during the last 50 years to include 48 colleges within 39 community college districts, and whereas nearly 1 million students are enrolled annually in credit, non-credit, and community education courses, and whereas Illinois community colleges have educated citizens who have graduated with post-secondary certificates, credentials, and associate degrees, preparing them for successful careers in the workforce and transfers to four-year colleges and universities. And whereas the Illinois community colleges also provide adult education, literacy, and continuing education courses, and whereas these graduates have contributed to Illinois' economy, providing Illinois' employers with highly trained employees with skills for industry, manufacturing, healthcare, information technology, and other essential workforce talents. And whereas the state has benefited from the leadership and guidance provided to the community college system by the Illinois Community College Board, the Illinois Community College Trustees Association, the Illinois Council of Community College Presidents, the ICCB Student Advisory Committee, and the Illinois Community College Faculty Association. Therefore, be it resolved that the Illinois Board of Higher Education offers its sincere respect to one of the largest and highest quality community college systems in the world, providing accessible and cost-effective post-secondary education opportunities. And be it further resolved that the Illinois Board of Higher Education expresses its deep gratitude to the Illinois community colleges for the important contributions over the past 50 years, fulfilling their mission to raise the level of education and training for millions of Illinois citizens living and working in Illinois communities. Illinois Board of Higher Education, June 21st, 2016. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Jay, thank you. Just one out of order piece of business. I want to acknowledge Dr. Christophe Pierre, who's the Director of Academic Affairs for the University of Illinois Systems. Is this your last meeting? He is headed to New Jersey to become the Provost of Stevens Institute of Technology. I know you've been very active with the Board of Higher Ed. If we could all give him a round of applause for his work. Christophe. Tell Governor Christie we all say hi. See how that turnpike's working for him. Why don't we, forgot about that till just now. All right, so we have a panel discussion. We're going to try to move this along, but also give them the opportunity to speak about the navigating of the budget crisis. And we have folks from higher education, the colleges, students, and communities. They're all being impacted by the budget impasse. This is something Dr. Applegate's put together. So, Jim, if you want to introduce everybody, and we'll move it along.
All right, thanks very much. I just would take 1 second to say that it has been a joy working with Dr. Karen Hunter Anderson in the community college system. The partnership there is, I don't know how it could be much better, along with Isaac and Eric Zarnago, who's also on our panel. So let me ask our panelists to come up. Dr. Randy Dunn, President of Southern Illinois University, Rob Whitmer, President of Heartland Community College, Dwayne Bonifer, Executive Director of Marketing and Communications from Monmouth College, Eric, Executive Director of the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, and Brad Cole, Executive Director of the Illinois Municipal League. And let me say, as we start this conversation, that looking around our board and seeing all the people on our board who are directly involved as presidents and others in what we're dealing with here, we always try to structure these as discussions. There are no talking heads, and we look for we really hope the board members will feel will want to actively engage as well. We want to spend a little bit of time again highlighting some of the impacts of the budget impasse. I still hear from people who sometimes don't quite get all that's happening and the impacts, but we also want to spend a big part of this conversation thinking about something that Tom led the conversation on this morning with the presidents about moving forward and how we can work together once we do get a budget, to really get things back on track and to move the system forward and trend upward as we discussed. So let me start, since we always start with students, let me start by asking a question to the panel. What are you seeing as some of the impact, and we have student folks here, the members, who can speak to this as well, and Tyler made reference to this. What are we seeing as some of the impact on access and recruitment and retention of students as we go forward? We know the enrollments have sort of held their own, but what are you seeing out there in terms of the impact on students? And I don't know, Eric, if you want to talk a bit about the MAP students, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So I'll start off talking about the Monetary Award Program, or MAP grants, and basically that's the state's need-based grant program to help low-income students go to college, and it's one of the largest programs of its kind in the country. And when you look at MAP recipients, for a dependent student, their average family income is about $30,000 a year. For independent students, it's about $15,000 a year. And almost 60% of MAP recipients, the federal government determines that they have no expected family contribution, that basically they have no financial resources to be able to contribute to their own education. So obviously great financial need. When you look at MAP for FY16, we basically have received funding and have paid MAP claims for the fall term. We have not received funding yet for the spring term for FY16. So what that's done is it's really created a huge environment of uncertainty. So for the students, they don't know, am I going to get the rest of the MAP money? And these are grants to students that are paid through the universities and the schools, both public and private, as well as community colleges. So there's also uncertainty for the schools, because in some cases the schools have advanced money. They, basically trusted the state that there would be funding for MAP, and they advanced money for the MAP recipients. Or if they didn't advance money, they still have the question about, we now have an unpaid balance, what do we do with that? Do we allow students to continue to enroll? Do we demand that they pay up? Are we going to allow them to graduate? Are we going to allow them to transfer? And unfortunately, we don't have uniformity across the system on what schools are doing. Different schools are in different positions financially on what they've been able to do, so that creates a lot of confusion for students. We've obviously awarded MAP for FY17 as we go into the fall. So there's still a lot of uncertainty out there, and what we've seen with FAFSA filing, which is the free application for federal student aid, and that's the application we use for our MAP grant. They don't have to file a separate application. We've seen FAFSA filing in Illinois is down pretty significantly. It's down about 9% overall. And for MAP recipients, it's down double digits. It's down around 11, 12%. So what that tells us is there is likely to be fewer students going to college in Illinois in the fall, and there will likely be fewer MAP recipients going to college in Illinois in the fall. And we also know from the data that the students not filing are disproportionately returning students. So not new students, but students who would be coming back. And we're in the process of doing a survey of MAP recipients who received the grant in the fall. The early data tells us there's a lot who are deciding not to return because they can't afford to, and because they also have lost trust in the state. Now, there's a circle of trust when you think about, we offer a grant, students go to school, they receive the money. When that circle of trust is broken, trust is hard to restore. One of the further challenges that we have coming up is the federal government has moved from January 1st being the starting date for FAFSA completion, and they've basically accelerated or moved that process up by 3 months. So for our fiscal 2018, we will start actually awarding MAP on October 1st this fall. So we have the potential really to have 3 years open for MAP. Still unknown, will rest of FY16 be paid? We don't have a budget yet for FY17, uncertainty, and then also for FY18. The challenge too is for students that they can't borrow money after the fact. The school year's over, so they can't go borrow to pay that unpaid balance. They can't use next year's money to pay it. So depending on what the school's doing, how do they go to college? So I'd say if there's one word to leave with, it's uncertainty. And people have a very hard time dealing with uncertainty because it freezes them. They don't know what to do and how to make those choices.
Okay. Can I ask a question?
Sure. So we're here for it.
Thanks. Eric, who can help me out understand this whole issue of, I know you don't do student loans, I know there's a distinction there, but it just seems like the interest rates charged on these loans are very, very high given where we are in the economy, 7 or 8%, maybe they're not as that high. Who would be a good resource for us to talk to about just that whole issue? And again, I know it's not you,
Right.
but.
Well, we can provide you that information. Remember that when you think about students' loans, about 90% of the student loans are actually provided by the federal government.
Okay.
That's all done as direct lending. So basically, those rates are set by the federal government, by Congress, and are determined that way.
And what are the rates generally in those?
It varies depending on the type of loan. I think my recollection is they're in the 5% range, but if somebody else.
Okay, they have 5%. Yeah, it seemed like some are even higher, but.
Yeah, and it depends. There's floating rate loans, there's fixed rate
All
loans,
right.
so there's different options, but we can definitely get you that.
If you could, I know it's off topic, but it just seems to be
Yeah.
a problem out there.
One other quick thing I would add too is while we talk a lot about MAP, we also have other grants and scholarship programs that have been funded. Golden Apple Scholars, which helps educate teachers who teach in high-need school districts, Minority Teachers of Illinois, and one that really breaks my heart is dependents grants. These are grants to dependents of police officers, firefighters, correctional officers killed or disabled in the line of duty. So we haven't paid those grants. And so the focus really is all on MAP, but there's also other programs at ISAC that have not been funded for FY16.
Can you get all those to me?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah. John, you had?
I did have a question. Is your survey for the non-returning MAP recipients, will that delineate who just stops going to college versus who goes to another state?
So what we have done is, and obviously when you do a survey, it's based on who responds to the survey. And what we did is we surveyed MAP recipients who received the MAP grant for the fall of FY16, so last fall. And from the survey data, there's definitely, and we're still compiling this, so I'm a little bit early to get out there with the talking points on it. But basically, we're seeing a lot of students who have decided not to return, I would say generally for low-income students, those are typically not the students that are going to go to another state. Most low-income students are place-based. So if they're not going, it usually means that they've dropped out or they're taking fewer credit hours. One thing I would also note is when I talked about the FAFSA volume being down is about 30% of families and students don't file FAFSAs. Generally, those are students and families who don't have financial need. They're just going to pay for college. And my concern is they're far more mobile than folks who need financial aid. And I think the risk that they are going out of state because of the uncertainty of what's going on in the state is actually much greater. So we may actually see more flight of basically students and families that can afford to pay for college.
You know, I would suspect that that's so for lower income students. I'd just be interested in seeing data if it's available. Because, I mean, going somewhere else is a bad outcome. Not going at all is a worse outcome.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think in our discussions about this, and we've said there's two levels of tragedy. One is when students do leave the state because of the talent drain, but the deeper level of tragedy is we know from a number of our institutions, if they don't go to those institutions, they just don't go. Other comments on impacts on students that can be related to MAP or not related to MAP from the panel or from other board members?
Good afternoon. I'd just like to offer, I think the common theme this afternoon is likely to be uncertainty and the impact of uncertainty. And that's not just from our perspective, but obviously from the students' perspective. We've been spending, as community colleges and higher ed in general, a lot of effort and a lot of energy on completion and persistence and having students stay with us and putting in systems in place to early alert systems and monitoring systems and intervention systems. And now to have that set aside or that influenced by this uncertainty of, well, can I even come back? Can I even afford to come here next year? Will the MAP funds be there? It just undermines a lot of what we've tried to accomplish. And all of us, I'm sure, trying to accomplish in that regard. As you add to that, the community college students, as I'm sure many of you know, are late pursuers of financial aid and late enrollees. And oftentimes now, especially with the timelines pushing back, that's going to have another adverse effect. So it's the perfect storm of things we're trying to do and uncertainty surrounding it, absence of MAP funding. All these things combined, I think, will certainly have a detrimental effect on students long term.
Our community college colleagues know this with their students, but sometimes we forget with the universities as well, we are access institutions. If you think about the challenges that can exist for some of those families, it just takes one thing like this, uncertainty about the MAP dollars, or questions that I know all of my colleagues get about the sustainability of programs over time. A student or parent will present at the university, look at a certain major, wonder about starting in that major, and then we'll immediately ask the question, but will it be here for me to complete the program? And when you work with a large percentage of access students, it can be just one thing that causes that student or a family to go a different direction, to say, well, let's wait a year, or let's look at some other option, not getting them into the higher education system. And that's what worries me about this, and building on President Widmer's comment, each year that happens, we fall further and further behind in terms of the goals that this board and the state as a whole has set out. And it's very worrisome, obviously, because when we lose these years in succession, we have a hard time catching up.
And Dwayne, I know a lot of times when you say private colleges, people have certain stereotypes, but a lot of our private colleges, and one I know particularly a lot about, do a lot of access work with the vulnerable populations, and I'd be interested in your views on what this uncertainty and other things are impacting in terms of impacting our students across the board, public and private.
Well, at Monmouth College, more than 40% of the students are Pell recipients already, and first-generation college students. So we're dealing with a lot of students who, are very much affected by the MAP grants. What we did at Monmouth College is we pledged during 15-16, 16-17 to make up any difference of the shortfall with the state. So if a student received a $2,800 MAP grant, we made that up out of our own budget. The impact that has on us is our ability to expand academic programs, to hire more faculty, to pay faculty, to develop the campus, so it's going to have an impact later on. Where we're also seeing an impact on this as well is in terms of the impact on our faculty. We lost recently one of our top faculty because they had a spouse who was at a state university that had undergone serious financial issues. They both had to leave the state of Illinois to go to the state of Iowa. Iowa State University, both received tenure track positions in the history department, and it left a major hole for our students there as well. So there are just so many levels and so many ways it has an impact on a college or on a campus community.
Maybe a couple of questions. Just one, can you give a sense of the range of MAP grants and what might be an average? And second question, so in the short term, schools have been able to self-fund these students, but that capacity is going to run out at some point. So what kind of impact in terms of enrollment do you see at individual schools?
So the range of the MAP grant can be as little as $300 is the minimum amount. The maximum MAP award is $4,720, and that's for the full academic year. My recollection is that the average MAP grant is about $2,900.
And in terms of impact on enrollment?
My university colleagues would beat me up afterward if I didn't speak to the fact that all of the public universities for 2015-16 did front the MAP money for all students. I don't know numbers for all of the institutions. Eric would probably have that for the state, but we're talking within just the SIU system about 6,500 students. So when we think about the notion of access and what that means, it's a huge number, and I'm not in a position to make any public pronouncement, but I can tell you that each one of the presidents for the public 4 years are trying to figure out right now the way we can stay with that pledge for the fall of 2016. I don't, again, think we're ready to go out and make public statements, but I know that each one of us in putting our budgets together, to the extent we put budgets together in this environment, is trying to figure out a way to continue to front that money, because the impact, again, if you look at a typical student at one of the SIU campuses, would be devastating, and it is a large number of, large percentage of our undergraduate students.
Eric, what's the budget request in an ideal world on an annual basis for MAP? What's the number?
So the last year we've gotten a full budget, and so the dollars for MAP have traditionally been about $373 million. For FY15, you may recall there was a late year budget cut that was sort of across the board. That knocked MAP down to about $365 million. One of the frustrating things I would say about MAP is, whichever party you are, the budget proposals have had MAP at least flat funded. Some of the proposals have had an increase in MAP up to $397 million. So when you talk to members of the General Assembly or the governor's office, there's nobody that is not supportive of MAP.
Right.
They all believe that, you know, whether you come at it from a social justice perspective and reducing achievement gaps, or whether you come at it from building an educated workforce, which is important for jobs in the economy of the state, there is broad bipartisan support for MAP. So one of the frustrating things is that we are here at this point with the fiscal year about to end, and we don't know yet for FY16, will there be remaining MAP funding or not.
But even at I think, was it 373?
Yes.
The last one. Even at 373, that doesn't, as I understand it, that's not even an adequate number, is it, to take care of your needs?
No, so we have, over the last few years, been able to fund about half of the people that were eligible for MAP.
At 373?
At 373. The other
Wow.
thing is there's been a very significant erosion of purchasing power of MAP. So if you go back about 12 years ago, the MAP grant was enough to pay for tuition and fees at a public university or community college. Today, we're more like a third of the cost of tuition and fees at a public university and less than half even at a community college. And we're only able to serve about half the people that are eligible roughly. So there's been a significant defunding, if you will, of support for MAP. I know the public agenda for higher education, one of the things we saw in the midpoint report is that achievement gaps in Illinois have actually widened. So that's basically degree attainment for people from higher income families compared to low income families. The goal is to reduce achievement gaps, and they've actually widened in the state. And MAP is obviously one of the main tools that we have to help reduce achievement gaps because it helps provide financial aid, and the big gap is financial.
I'm sorry to dwell on this, but I'm just curious. I was up at Northern touring a couple weeks ago, and I thought one of the issues, and they said you were cognizant of it and were working with them, was that if you knew, the game's the wrong word, but if you knew the system and knew how to apply and you got in early, you have a better chance, or you get your, if you're the guy or gal that comes in late, then help me out on this.
I was going to bring this up.
Okay.
We have, on the community college side, we have long argued that, not, I don't think through any fault of anybody, because I don't think as a system we wanted to
Yeah, and they weren't being
disadvantage.
critical at all of you guys.
But-
I want to make sure I'm clear about
But the
that.
community college students are usually at a disadvantage for even applying for MAP and getting them. And we actually had worked with ISAC and others a number of years ago to try to change that in ways that would be budget neutral, as well as ways of how do we increase it so we can get more students. So that group of students is set up somehow because of this issue. Not just community college students, but
Right.
across the board. but
And you're aware of it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so when we look at the data, one of the things that we see is basically MAP is a first come, first serve. So you got to sign up and get in line, and you do that by completing your FAFSA. So one of the things we've worked a lot on and the schools work on is getting the word out to get your FAFSA completed as soon as possible. Some change at the federal level. They've gone to what they call prior year that should help that process. But when we look at the data, we actually see that students at community colleges get in line pretty much proportionally with where students go to college in Illinois. So roughly the same percentage of students who go to community colleges actually get in line for MAP and make the cutoff. What we see a very big difference is in what we call the claim rates. So even though students get in line, they may or may not show up for school in the fall, and they may or may not take full load. They may go part-time. So we see that for the public universities and the private universities, we have a claim rate of about 80%, give or take. For community colleges, the claim rate is closer to 55%. So we actually get proportionally community college students getting in line with proportionally where they go, but they claim at a much lower rate than students who are going to a four-year school.
Do you have any Do you have any data to suggest any reasons why that is, why community college students are claiming at a much lower rate?
We don't have great data on that, and a lot of it's more what I would describe as anecdotal. One of the things that we see, and you probably see it with community college enrollments, is it can be very tied to the economy. So if the job market is robust, there will be students coming out of college or adults who go into the workforce and work rather than pursuing a higher education. We do see with the economic cycle, when there's downturns and unemployment goes up, that there tends to be a significant increase in enrollments at community colleges, both for students coming straight out of high school as well as returning adults.
So, as Tom said, we focused a lot on the MAP students. I know there are implications for all of our students for this, and we've talked about students leaving the state, competition from out of state. But I want us to have time to talk about next steps going forward. So if it's okay, I'm going to move us to the impact of this on faculty and staff. I mean, I know, for example, the University of Illinois recently reported a huge increase in the number of tenured faculty losses over this period. So what do we see in terms of departures? You mentioned already, but departures, morale, what's the impact of this? We know we've seen the layoff numbers across the board. What are we seeing as the impact of this on our faculty and staff that we're going to have to work to move beyond once we get a budget?
Numbers are clearly higher. And what we're experiencing generally is that we're seeing more people go for the exits. If it's someone who's in a retirement situation and could stay or go, I think there's a tendency to go as we look at increased numbers on year-to-year comparisons. But I think what all of us are experiencing are those really blue-chip faculty members, the ones who have other opportunities are being recruited where we may have been able to hold that off for a while by making counteroffers or providing opportunities for them to keep them attached to the campuses. We're not able to do that anymore. And virtually, as we've talked as a group of presidents, you can almost go down the line and you have those outstanding faculty or research individuals who have other options, and now we're seeing them taking them. And it's not a matter of providing a counteroffer or sweetening the pot. They're saying now is the time, and we're losing them. So not only is it just the overall staffing issue with having more slots to fill than would be the case in a typical year, but the best of the best who have options are now exercising them, and it's leaving big holes in some areas that are going to be tough to fill. And that's when we talk about the recovery or moving forward. We have some academic areas and some research expertise, particularly in specialty areas for us, energy, engineering, our medical school, that we're not going to be able to fulfill for some time because the individuals aren't out there, and that's a big worry right now.
Can I just make 2 points? So first, about the complexity involved with securing whatever financial aid might be out there. To your question, Tom. So most students, the vast majority, even the cream of the crop, have to go through hurdles to secure their financial aid. I am an independent student. My mother ran admissions and recruitment and financial aid for several institutions in Chicago, and she taught me much of how to apply for financial aid. I would not have been able to get myself through school if I didn't have that knowledge, because the things are so uncertain now that like the suspension date for MAP grants is different every year. And so, Eric, can you tell me how much notice between when you announce a suspension date for MAP, how much notice is usually for the past 2 or 3 years? How much are we talking, like a week notice, 2 weeks?
So generally, and one of the challenges obviously is when, we have to make assumptions around how much money is the General Assembly going to provide, because we basically award MAP before we get money from the General Assembly. In addition, we also have to use the past to predict the future. So we, similar to schools, that forecast enrollment, and you may accept students knowing that not everybody's going to come, it's similar to MAP. We have to estimate what claim rates are going to be to make sure that we don't over-award MAP, because we can't spend a penny more than we get as an appropriation, so we have to manage that mix. One of the things we found is when you put out an announcement that says, we're going to close this date, all of a sudden you get a rush of applications, and you can very quickly spend more money than you think you're likely to get, and that's problematic. So typically the notice is a few days, a couple of days. The message that we constantly say is file early, don't wait.
And so that suspension date has been in February or March lately? What is it?
So it's been as early as, I think, February 22nd, if I remember right, and this year it was March, I think it was March 10th.
So at the federal level, for like Pell Grants, FAFSA is due as late as the summer or right before you begin college. But for Illinois MAP grants, you have to get it in February. And you are given 3 days notice from ISAC on terms of get it in within 3 or 4 days if you want to be eligible for a MAP grant, if you want to be in line for it. So that kind of notice for students who are putting themselves through school, or for students who need to gather tax information from their parents and their W-2s and et cetera, is just not at all feasible. So you see many students who miss that deadline, and then the question is, well, should I wait a year, or should I go part-time, or should I work instead? And that's how we start to lose students, not just from the immediate impact of low MAP money, I can't afford college right now, but also, well, the ongoing implications of I'll go to work instead, or I'll do part-time. And that's how we see this affect our completion rates over not just this current crisis, but this will be an effect that we see over the next 2 or 3 years, because students are having to make choices that are directly from this 2 or 3 day notice to get MAP in, or to get their FAFSA in. So I just wanted to give that insight.
And we have a lot several issues we want to cover, so I apologize for moving us along here, but we asked Brad to be with us today from the Illinois Municipal League because we heard President Dietz a moment ago talk about the impact of Illinois State on the community. We know all of our universities and community colleges. Certainly, we always talk about the students we graduate and the workforce needs we meet, but we're also employers and we're financial drivers as entities in our regions. And so, Brad, I don't know if you want to kick off a brief discussion of what we're seeing as the impacts of this on our regions and communities around Illinois as we continue in this non-funding situation.
Sure, and thank you for the invitation to be here, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to say first, with regard to Sean and Tyler, representing the students, I mean, the students have such an impact in the communities that they attend school in. It's not just as a spender or as a student. 23 years ago, I was a member of the Student Assistance Commission, appointed by the governor, sat at these meetings, represented ISAC on behalf of our board chairman, Bob Barr at the time. Later went on to be mayor of Carbondale for a couple of terms, and now whatever I do. And so I think we have to connect all of the dots, and Dr. Dunn mentioned the blue chip faculty that would be leaving. I was able to do a lot of those things because I was mentored by the then president of SIU, John Guyon, who was a great friend and leader. If those people aren't there to help mentor and push students, like these two fine young gentlemen, where will they be? And will the opportunities be created for them to go on and do other things? So there are a lot of dots that need to be connected other than just directly, and I'll answer your question about with faculty and staff leaving for other opportunities, what does that do to the home sales market in their community? A lot of homes go up for sale. We think about a financial impact on a community. Do those then become vacant because there's not the incoming faculty and staff or the industry perhaps to buy those homes? Then, of course, the hundreds of millions of dollars that are impacted in the funds that are spent, student dollars, faculty and staff. Dr. Dietz mentioned that earlier. What about the future employment in those communities for the people like me? I was from a small town in central Illinois, moved to Carbondale, stayed there. Are those students moving to these communities and then staying, or are they going to move out of state or move somewhere else? So what's the brain drain on those communities? And of course, another piece of the economic impact that is lost is with reduced funds available for campuses, you see more in deferred maintenance. So there's not the investment into the facilities, and so you lose a lot of the blue-collar investment in the trades because the work's not being done, and then the overall value of the community is declining because you have empty homes because everybody's moved out, the campuses are not being kept up, the students aren't moving in, they're not working, they're not generating other dollars. The other thing with the loss of students is many of these communities rely on students for part of their census count. And universities and prisons are a good population source for a community that wants to up its census. Prisons aren't having the problem. And so for communities such as my own in Carbondale, when the population, or Macomb, or Charleston, I've been in all these communities in the last few weeks, when the student enrollment goes down, some of those students won't be counted in their population. That will have a direct impact on the amount of money that comes back to them for investment in their roads and bridges and infrastructure, and also in their return of the local income tax. So those are additional impacts on communities that we don't often think about if you're just talking about higher education, because we lose track of all the different things that they touch. I also want to mention that when those faculty and staff move, or even the students, when the employment declines or enrollment declines, you're seeing less involvement in the healthcare system. You're seeing physicians that then have to relocate. Right now, the budget impasse also is affecting that sector of the economy because they're not paying the bills. And so that's deeply impacting communities, although that's not directly related to higher ed, it's everything else. But I think there are a lot of these issues that affect communities that are on the, kind of on the fringe of higher ed. We do have, and I want to mention the Illinois Coalition to Invest in Higher Education. Several people are here. We've been bringing that group together. We're just a piece of it, but we've been involved in that for the last year or so. So there's a lot of different pieces that affect the communities. 1,297 municipalities in Illinois. Now, there are hundreds that have a community college campus or a public or private university or college campus, but every single municipality is touched by higher ed. Either they have a son or daughter, nephew, niece, husband, relative that's attending higher education or seeking higher education, or they work there, or they have some investment in the system. So it impacts every single municipality, from the smallest, which is population 13, Valley City, all the way up to 2.5 million in Chicago.
The other area where we're seeing an impact is on education, in that we're having faculty and staff at Monmouth College starting to send their kids to private schools in Iowa, which isn't too far away, because schools might be closing in December or January in Monmouth, and that makes it hard to recruit new faculty and staff to come there, because the education system in Illinois all of a sudden it becomes a liability for us instead of an asset. I mean, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad my two sons are back in public schools in Kentucky right now instead of Illinois, which I never would have said 2 years ago. But that's an impact as well. That's affecting higher education, because a lot of our faculty and staff have children. We're trying to bring them into these communities, often from out of state. And if our school systems aren't going to be open in March or open in February, or some even closed earlier than that, it's going to be harder to convince people to come here and work at a college or university.
You know, I think that you're very fortunate still that you could send your children to another state, but there's a lot of people who are the working poor.
That's right.
With children in schools that can't afford that.
That's exactly right.
They cannot do that. And that's one of the biggest concerns that we have, that we need to look at. What are we doing about this, especially when you talk about MAP? When you ask people to apply for MAP at a certain specific time. There was a study done 20 years ago, and another one done recently to check to see how many students, minority students, minority students actually, when do they apply or when do they decide to go to college? 48% decide around June. MAP is long gone by then. 48%. And it could very well be because they're not receiving, and they probably are not receiving the adequate support from their high school counselors or anyone else. They don't have that built-in advisors like some of us do, where we start telling our students, start applying a year before, or think about it a year before. We don't have that. So those are the ones, and now more so than ever is what we're seeing, that gap become that much larger. And that is something that troubles me, because most of these can't afford to send their kids to Kentucky.
So I don't want to, but I'd like to shift this just a moment. I think we're getting a sense, and we did want to spend some time making sure that we were acknowledging the multiple dimensions in which this is impacting our communities, our faculty, our staff, and our students. But thinking moving forward, in terms of, obviously, this is not something where we get a budget and we flip the light switch and everything's back to the way it was. But we had this discussion with the presidents today. Tom was talking about this. What do you think are some of the things we should be being, as Tom said, proactive about right now? Assuming we're going to get a budget, I'm going to just say that sometime. What should we be being proactive about together? IBHE wants to be a partner in this, and with our higher ed colleagues and 2- and 4-year public and private, as well as with our regional networks, many of which include mayors and other folks. What should we be doing to be proactive to kind of push forward and try to get things moving back to, you know, I mentioned all the good data on our system before, to be in a place where we can continue to provide that service. What do you see as some of the things we can be doing now to, as Tom said, not be on the defensive, but let's go on the offensive here? Thoughts? Board members, panelists?
I would just offer, from a general perspective, I think we've focused a lot on MAP and obviously on the students, and that's critically important. but we really do need those operational funds. And this is a unique community here, I think, in that it's similar to Carbondale where others, where we have a major state university, a strong community college, a strong private institution, and then a branch of another small private institution. So we're very much educationally based, and we had the opportunity to visit with some of our local legislators this morning at breakfast, and we tried to emphasize that there are all elements of the community that are impacted by this absence of state funding, and we need the funds to flow. And when the time comes that the funds do flow, I think all of us are hopefully optimistic that that will happen at some point in time. But we need to have then the flexibility to respond with the monies that do come to us, and that hopefully don't come to us with our hands and tying our hands in the process. That we have the flexibility to use those monies where we have had to make changes over a year or year and a half, or hopefully not 2 years, but we will have made a lot of decisions on the fly because we kept thinking that it's going to be coming. And the uncertainty of not knowing, we've been forced to take some actions. I think many of us, if not all of us, have left positions vacant. We've let retirements happen and not filled after retirements. There's been layoffs, involuntary layoffs in many places. We're at the point where we've tried to insulate students from those impacts. If this persists, it's going to be much harder I know for my community college colleagues to avoid the dramatic impacts on students. We're going to have to get into reducing sections, reducing opportunities for students. And we're fortunate in community colleges that 90% of we're a locally based institution, and our students stay in the community. So they're not necessarily exiting to other institutions, but they're trying to come to us, but they're really struggling to know what is going to be happening at that institution. And so I think flexibility is important.
That's a good point. I want to be real clear, and I maybe spent a little more time on it in the President's meeting. I'm not at all suggesting that the funding is not important, and you weren't saying that, but I want to be real clear. After listening to folks and traveling around the state to a certain degree, I realized the significance of the funding. And my only point is that what's happened is we almost causes a form of paralysis where we're afraid to move, and we're not sure what to do because we're in the survival mode. And it's just we need to remind people, and we need to think about how we do this, that we do have a lot of positive things going on. But I get whether it's MAP or whether it's SIU or whether it's a community college, it's very, very, very important to get that done. And I wish I had a quick answer for you, and I wish I could make it happen as the chair of this board, but it was kind of go down parallel tracks if we can.
No, I understand.
I did have a question since you broached the topic of program cuts. How do you envision at a high level you would make that decision-making of what goes and what stays?
Well, I think it's
not to entirely put you on a hot seat, but to put you on a hot seat.
I think it would be more a function of not eliminating programs, but having fewer opportunities for students. The number of sections being pulled back, not necessarily full elimination of programs. Where it has been demonstrated this past year has been in community colleges and adult education. We have seen adult education, which is your among your most at-risk, high-need population. And we have had to, across the community college system, reduce those programs. Some have been eliminated altogether. Others have avoided eliminating but have radically cut back those programs. I know we've cut ours essentially in half. We have served over 1,000 students every year in adult education, high school equivalency, English second language. So I think in few cases will we in community colleges actually eliminate entire programs or area programs of study. I think it's going to be more scaling back the number of offerings that we have available to our students.
I think the other thing we've seen, I was just going to mention that, is the associated supports that supports underrepresented groups like counseling or disability services or the things that are targeted to close that gap to support students who are struggling. Sometimes those are the first things to go. And so now the students that are already struggling have even less support to be able to make it in the programs that exist.
I don't want to dodge your question because I think it's important, but to Teresa's point, that's exactly what's happening. So we've characterized this at times as kind of concentric rings, and at the core, obviously, you have the academic programs, critical student services, and then there's academic support programs. The types of things that you're describing, Teresa, would fall into that, and there are regional and outreach services. And what we've tried to do in our own cost reductions is work from those outer rings in. That we've lost many of those support programs, the outreach efforts, the things that are, shall I say, great and powerful that we do for our regions, that all of the state universities do in support of their regions. That's what's being dismantled right now. And it will be a long time to get that back because each of those things has an infrastructure around it that's getting taken apart. The people are leaving, and we'll have to build that back, eventually assuming support for that work. Within that core of the academic programs, critical student services, we talked a bit this morning about the fact that I think the board has a role to play in looking, for instance, at how you guide academic program review, giving us guidance there, indicating some standards to use so that as we go back to the campus and talk about program viability, we look at number of enrollments, we look at graduates, time to progress to degree, all of these indicators, that we have some standards to work from. Not that we're going to provide a cookie cutter approach for every program, but as opposed to kind of groping in the dark, the guidance that we can have from this board in terms of doing that analysis and looking at those programs, I think can be tremendously helpful and use that to guide our work. To the point that Chair Cross shared as he met with the presidents this morning, I do think this advocacy role is important. And not to, get too cosmic on it, but we are in this crisis of confidence right now that exists around the public institutions of higher education in the state of Illinois, whether you're looking at applications, MAP applications, people leaving, the applications going to other schools. I happened in a previous life to serve as president at one of those Kentucky public institutions, talked to someone there last week. Their Illinois apps are up 40% this year. So we have these pieces of data that we can look to, but more broadly, I do think this advocacy role that exists is important. How we do it, we have to talk about, but to make the message clear and strong that we're not going anywhere, that these institutions are strong, we have these rules to play, and I might add, again, not just around the core, but around these second and third tier rings. I can't use the time to do a lot of bragging, but SIU is a national leader in coal research. We're providing Alzheimer research, care, and support for the bottom half of the state of Illinois. I could keep going on. Every one of our other schools could do that, and that's what's getting picked apart right now. We're still kind of holding that core, but it's all of this other work that we're seeing dismantled, and we're worried as we go further into this crisis, that core is at danger as well.
No, that's very helpful, what
I
you
think
just said.
here's the other thing, too. I think the middle class and upper middle class, they're going to figure out a way to get into college and get through college because they've got the social capital. Okay? You want to listen to what Ms. Stranderson said about people who apply to college in June. I mean, we do a great job in higher education with the low-hanging fruit. We do such a great job educating well-prepared students and graduating them. But it's those students on the margins where I would focus on if a budget becomes available, getting them not only prepared for college and support, but getting them into college and making sure colleges take care of them for the 3 or 4 years that they're there. Maybe we can start graduating people in 3 years. And I think that's where you could have a lot of success. Because, I mean, the middle class, upper middle class is going to do fine. It's that group that we're trying to break into the knowledge economy that really is the future of the state that we have to focus on, I think.
We don't have time. I'd love to have this conversation and truly understand. I'd like to know, I'm not arguing, if the middle class really is okay in this whole discussion.
It's
And I get
smaller.
your, and I get your
Smaller,
point.
right.
I get your point. I'm not, I want to argue, but I'd love to have that
I would follow
conversation at another time because I think it's
But
fascinating.
I want to add one thing. I mean, you know, that, he's talking about the changing demographic. That's a changing demographic
Yeah.
across the country.
Right.
What you have with educational institutions is they pay attention to that. They design programs that are aimed at that. I mean, you have short-term and you have long-term goals. And when you come up with a budget situation like this that causes people to have to react immediately, educational institutions, that's why they need the flexibility. They don't have the time to think long-term about what it's going to take or the kinds of adjustments they're going to need.
No argument. I guess my only point is when you have $1 trillion in student loan debt,
Yes, yes.
is the middle class really okay? And I you know more than I do, I'd just love to have that conversation with you
Yes.
sometime.
Anytime.
All right, I'm sorry, Jim, I know you're
No.
doing this.
No, go ahead,
Just-
Alice.
We talked about a lot of different student groups this afternoon, and thinking about what Rob Whitmer said in terms of the uncertainty and your question about how do you make the decisions. We made the decisions to suspend 2 academic programs because of low enrollment, high cost. But the first program that we had to suspend, we did what you talked about, tried to preserve the core mission of the college. But the one program that I really agonized over was suspending our work at the Danville Correctional Center, because that is a group of individuals that the rate of recidivism is so much less when they have access to higher education. And that was the first thing that I was forced to suspend when the funding was not there. We had to look at how the programs are funded. So, thank you.
So I want to be sensitive to time, and we do have some, but I think we've gotten a sense of the breadth of the impact of this on communities, on students, on institutions, and hopefully we can begin to think about the messaging, the moving forward. As Tom said, parallel tracks. It's not like we don't recognize getting a budget is priority 1, 2, and 3. And I guess, you know, one of the things I've learned from this conversation, and certainly over the last year, and I've said this publicly, is that when these kinds of dysfunctions occur, those who can least afford to be hurt are hurt the most. And that happens for students, it happens for institutions, it happens at every level. And so hopefully we can get back to a place where, to your example, Alice, we can begin to try to get back to serving those who do need us the most. So I want to thank our Tom, did you have something you want to say? Okay. I want to thank our panel for the time they devoted in helping us think through this, and we'll be working on both trying to work together to get ourselves righted, but also to think at the same time about how we move forward once things are righted. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. All right, thank you, that was very good. All right, we got to keep moving here. Dan Cullen, you want to go over program reviews?
Yes, before I do the program reviews, let me review the tally count quickly. Mr. Chair, we have included in the memo a listing of all pending academic programs and authorization proposals submitted to the board through June 2nd. Since then, 16 additional proposals have been received. As of June 15th, there were 9 new requests for program modifications added to the 22 reported in the memo. 1 application has been withdrawn since the last board meeting. Mr. Chair, item 1 requests approval of 16 associate degree programs at 11 public community colleges. I now offer this item for consideration.
Sorry about that. Jim, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
Where are we?
You're in
Okay.
charge. It's all good.
We were having a good question. Any questions on items?
Item 1.
Item
6-1.
6-1. Any questions? All right, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Well, all right. Christine, 1. Teresa, 2. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? It's really fast when you can do it when the chair's not in the chair. That was good. You just want me to move and you keep doing it? All right, let's go. Sorry about that.
Item
6-2.
Mr. Chair, item 2 requests approval of 5 associate degree programs and 4 graduate degree programs at 5 independent institutions. I now offer this item for consideration.
Jane?
I have some questions.
Yeah, go.
So do I.
Christine?
My questions relate to the Madison Media Institute, DBA Rockford Career College. proposals. There was quite a bit of data given in the information about the graduation rates, the retention rates, and the student loan default rates for this institution that indicate that those are, it looked like to me, significantly below, in many cases, both the national averages and the state of Illinois averages. I know that there were some factors that you believe merit approving this now with more intense review going forward, but I would like to hear more from probably the college as well as from you about what your rationale was at the staff level and what the institution is committing to going forward if we approve this.
And let me piggyback on that. The materials suggested that there were detailed improvement plans that were going forward. I'd like to know something about those improvement plans. I would imagine they are relevant to the same.
Okay, thank you. And I believe the president of the college is here today. I'd invite him to come up and join me. Quickly, I would note that staff did put this forward with a recommendation that the board approve based on an improving trajectory in student outcomes, particularly around the loan default, for example, that was mentioned. The most recent rate was reduced by 11% from the previous year. So we're seeing those move in the right direction. We're seeing graduation rates improve. This is an institution that's been reconstituted recently and is moving forward in ways that data are indicating are in a positive direction. However, that said, we are still concerned, and we've communicated that both with the institution and in the write-up with yourselves, with the board members, that we are concerned that this institution needs to continue that trajectory. They're not where they need to be. And we are concerned about that. We have an issue in the state. One of the budget impacts that hits us as IBHG staff is it's very difficult in this time for us to do travel. But as much as possible, we do plan to do site visits. We have had staff at the college in the past. I'm not sure when that was, within in the last 12 months, staff have been there, and we intend to go back. And from a desk audit perspective, we are closely monitoring the data, even when data are not publicly released, because all the data from all the institutions are being worked on before everything is released at once. Behind the scenes, we're able to access more current data than what we show publicly. And so we can see the most current data, we're seeing positive indicators from the school. But I'll invite the president to discuss the specific institutional plans about moving forward and what they're doing.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. My name is Michael O'Haron. I'm the campus president for Rockford Career College. The campus has been in the community since 1862, so we do have some staying power. Absolutely, the information that you have in front of you, the numbers are unacceptable. The college has put together numerous improvement plans, at least since I've been with the college for the last 18 months. We've seen an improvement in our graduation rates by 8%. We've seen retention improve by 23% in the last year. So we feel like we're headed in the right direction. We do too feel, some of the economic crunches, but we're committed to improving our faculty, improving the support services that are available for our student population. We've really invested in student services support, and especially we deal with a high-risk student population. So having support resources available to our students and being able to partner struggling students with mentors, both on the student side and the faculty side. We feel like that's had an impact in improving student retention. we just got to stick with it, because we've dug ourselves a little bit of a hole, and we feel like we're coming out of it. We welcome the scrutiny, and we'll do our best to continue moving the numbers in the right direction.
I have a question concerning labor market information, particularly the associate degree, Associate of Applied Science and Allied Health.
Yes, so the associate degree in allied health is meant to be a stepping stone. We have diploma programs in medical office, billing and coding, medical assistant, massage therapy. These are 40-week training programs that are designed to give students skills. If a student were to graduate from one of those programs and want to pursue a degree credential, they could jump into that to offer them an associate degree. We don't plan to enroll solely in an associate degree in allied health program. A student would have to use that as a stepping stone to get an extra credential.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Cullen. So when will you be reviewing their progress toward these goals, and what will happen if they do not achieve their goals?
Well, we'll work with them on an annual basis, looking at data. When fall enrollment survey data come in and when IPEDS data come in, and we look at graduation and retention rates, particularly around those, when the U.S. Department of Education releases loan default rates and repayment rates. Whenever new data are available, typically those are annual data points. So we'll look at those. If we see red flags in those, if we see data that are moving in the wrong trajectory, then we will immediately engage with the institution. Regarding the approvals themselves, we are working much harder systemically, actually, and will certainly with this institution work on implementing what we have in code, which is the authority to review authorizations at the 5-year point. So for these, and actually the other recent approvals that have been granted by the IBHE, we'll be looking at those at the 5-year point, doing a desk audit and or site visit. If there are concerns at that point, then we would begin the procedures. If the institution is not maintaining the eligibility for those authorizations, we will begin the procedures for revocation.
All right, anyone else?
That will be at the 5-year point.
I have a question.
I just had a question. So at the 5-year point is what you're saying is when you would make an assessment in terms of what their status is. So can I ask the president about how long do you think it will take your institution to get up to speed?
Up to speed as far as retention and graduation?
Yes.
You know, I would say over the next 2 years, we're on a trajectory to meet the standards. I think in the next reporting year, we're going to be above the state average for graduation rates. And I do believe with data that's going to be coming out, the data that we're looking at most recently, that our retention rates are already climbing to the comparable state averages. So I think we're well on our way, but still be better.
Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry, Jay.
I have a question on a different one of these universities. The Rush University Doctorate in Occupational Therapy in the Chicago region. I have no problem with with what they want. My question is there may be something that I'm not understanding with the statutes that control us, but Rush University is in the Chicago region. This course, or this doctorate, is going to be offered, apparently, as I read this, at their home campus. I thought with these older universities, we only had to approve new programs if it was in a different higher education region.
That's correct. Rush University is not a grandfathered institution. It's fully under IBHE authority.
It was, even here it says it was started in 1837.
Well, I'm honestly not prepared to answer that question. I can get back to you, but when an institution fundamentally changes control or other fundamentals of the institution. For example, Rockford Career College, as you just heard, dates back to the 1800s. But when there's a change in control or structure, the grandfathered status does not continue through to the new organization.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so we are on, item 6.2. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I thought you were moving on, sorry.
No. So is there a motion to approve item 6.2? Going once.
So moved.
All right. Do we have a second? Second. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Dan, item 6.3.
Mr. Chair, item 3 requests approval of 4 baccalaureate degree programs, 2 graduate degree programs, and 1 center at 3 public universities. I now offer this item for consideration.
All right. I know everybody has this in front of them. Any questions?
I do have a particular question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is a representative from U of I, Urbana-Champaign here?
Yes.
I doubt you'd be able to answer this one. So, the degree program they want to create in Asian American Studies, and they have the liability, me being associated with that campus. I saw President Colleen's email last week of kind of major cost-cutting initiatives. That program projects 4 students in the first year, and the 5th year, 15 students. With a program of that low level of enrollment, in my mind, how would that jive with President Colleen's kind of stated direction?
Well, as is typical for most new public university degree programs, the institution is seeking authorization to offer a new program because this will be a new option in the course catalog. It would be a new option for students to graduate with that as a major, but it's really not a new program. These courses already exist at the university. They're offered as part of general education, as part of a minor that many students are already in, and so forth. So offering this new option for students as an option for a completion, whether it's standalone or more likely as a double major option, would not actually cost the institution any new resources because it's merely using current resources. But I can invite the institution to address that as well.
Yeah, and not that this would affect me voting yes or no. It's just the particular situation we find ourselves in, you know, and having more background information on the campus. It's just an item of discussion.
Christophe Gary, University of Illinois, Vice President for Academic Affairs. My last IDHG meeting. So basically, I will echo what Dan just said. This new program, this new major will not consume any additional resources. I think only 2 new courses are being created. There's already a minor in this area on the campus. And the current complement of faculty will fully handle the additional teaching, so it's not going to involve any new faculty hiring. I would actually go further and indicate make the point that there is a demand from students for this new major, so the program is really expected to attract additional students, and those additional students are going to pay tuition, including through double majors, and generate additional revenues for the department and the program. I think the last point I would make is that I would surmise that it's important for the department to have a full major as opposed to just a minor and be able to offer a complete program.
Did that help, John? Did that help? Okay. Anyone else? Anything else you guys want to add? Seems like you're winning.
Time to go.
I think, yeah. All right. Anybody else? All right. We need a motion, not I. We.
So moved.
All right. Second. All right. You got Jack. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. Thanks, Dan. All right. We're not done. We have the consent agenda, but I want to break this up a second. Who's doing this? All right. I'm going to do it. So the first one is going to be 7-4. Approval of board minutes, meeting minutes on March 1, 2016. Any discussion? All right, I need a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
You got to get these in before you leave, right? All right. All in favor, I'm going to give you guys opportunities as we finish up. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Fiscal year 2016 financial report as of May 31, 2016. Any questions? We need a motion to approve this? Okay.
So moved.
So moved, seconded?
Second.
All right, we got, okay. We're going to let these guys finish out strong. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. Now, on the appropriation transfers for fiscal year 2016, there are two of those dealing with appropriation transfers. All I would request, if we can do this in the motion, is that once they're done, is that you report back to the board on the exact transfers. So these are appropriation transfers. Anybody have a question about that? Any concerns about that? All right. So I need a motion approving the appropriation transfers for fiscal year 2016, subject to a report back to the board on the exact transfers. Tyler? All right. Sean? Second? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. We now go to executive session minutes. Now, there are executive session minutes that have not been out since 2010, and we have, I need to put these on the record, probably. I don't? Okay. So all of the executive session minutes, with the exception of June 2nd, 2015, and February 5th of 2016, I would request a motion that they be opened, with the exception of those two that I mentioned that are closed based on the recommendation of council. So I need, so moved by Jane, seconded by Tyler. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? No. All right. Who's got spring enrollment survey? What do you need on that?
It's just an information item. As I mentioned, as you saw there, overall, we did an additional spring enrollment this year because we were really monitoring to see what the impact of the budget impasse was. You saw the results. Overall, our universities held their own, as I noted, but there is some variation. You're seeing some drops, more so in some universities than in others, and we will give you as soon as we have the fall numbers, which is what we're really waiting for because of the things you just heard here in terms of what we might hear in the fall, to let you know what the impact of this has been in the fall. So we're moving forward with those data, but it's an information item.
Any questions? All right, Jim, thanks. Fiscal year 2017 appropriations for higher education, General Assembly action, written report. Who has this? Do we need to take any action on it? No. Well, if anybody has any questions, we have a written report, for those of you wondering. Candace, legislative update? Anything?
No, I have a written report. They are received with all the bills and passed, and we're waiting to be passed. And we have to answer the questions now or later.
Jane?
Like later.
I don't have any questions. No, thank you. We discussed it in more detail in the advocacy action team meeting.
Well, you'll have maybe all summer and every Wednesday to update that report. Got to feel good about that.
He canceled tomorrow.
He canceled, all right, well, you can stay in Bloomington Normal if you want to, because you don't have to go to Springfield. All right, any public comment? Any other matters? All right, we now are going to entertain a motion to adjourn with a second, and I'm only going to recognize two people to do this. Tyler, move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Sean, second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Good luck, guys, both of you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's okay. My name is Teresa.
I wasn't going to let you guys get out of here without doing some motions. Oh, you got to take some action. Tyler, good luck.
Nice to meet you. No, that's okay. First meetings are always, keep us very different. Different, just different. Yeah, that's